Welcome to the Bougie Baldie Podcast with your host, Kellie Rhymes.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Bougie Baldie Podcast. This is season number 2. So thank you guys for sticking around through season number 1 and waiting for season number 2 to come out because we have some special guests that are absolutely awesome. Okay. Now, if you are new to the podcast, my name is Kellie. I'm a women's hair loss support and authenticity coach. And now I can add something new to my title. I am a TV producer. I have produced a show called The Bougie Baldie Show, which is an extension of the podcast. I'll talk about that a little bit later at the end of the podcast and tell you where you will be able to watch that show, okay? Well, let me introduce you today to our guest, who is an awesome woman who is out here helping people gain their hair back. Okay, through functional medicine. So 𝐬𝐿 Dahlman is the founder of Alopecia 𝐬𝐿, a health and high performance hair growth coach. She's a professional international speaker and a podcast host to the Alopecia 𝐬𝐿 podcast, Awakening to Hair Growth. Through her own struggle with autoimmune alopecia, she now helps others worldwide reverse and heal hair loss naturally without the need of medications and failed treatments, defying the odds within various types of hair loss. She serves thousands of children and adults in over 67 countries. She focuses on various types of hair loss, including autoimmune, female pattern baldness, diffuse, telogen effluent, hormonal, long COVID, and others. 90% see hair growth in less than 8 weeks. Welcome, 𝐬𝐿, to the podcast, to the Bougie Baldie Podcast.
Thank you so much, Kellie. It's so wonderful to be here.
Good. Yeah. So let's go ahead and jump into it because whenever I start my podcast off and I'm interviewing a guest, I always want to hear about their personal journey, like what led them to the work that they're currently doing. So can you share your personal journey with hair loss and how it was or how it has influenced your life and the creation of Alopecia 𝐬𝐿?
Yes. So years ago, I'm now in my mid 40s. So in my 30s, early 30s, I was diagnosed in the salon with alopecia areata. I normally get highlights. You can't see them right now with the Zoom, but some of them are still there. I'm a little darker now, but every 2-3 months I get highlights done. And of course, in the back of the hair, you can't see, right? And no one's looking there on purpose for anything that's going on. And so as my stylist is doing the foils, he finds a round bald spot and he says to me directly, he's like, 𝐬𝐿, you need to go see a doctor. And I was like, what's alopecia? So I grab my phone and I start, doing an internet search right there in the chair as he's doing my foils. And my heart, my energy, everything just plummets because I'm reading that there's no cure, that this is a disease of anything. It's a disease. It's an autoimmune disease. It's the follicles attacking itself. There's no cure, like all the bad things that we all know about hair loss in general, but of course, in particular, autoimmune in my case. And at the time, you wouldn't have thought that I would be sick in any aspect. I had a personal trainer. I was fit. I had already just applied for a triathlon. I was living in Miami. I was at that time in California seeing my hairstylist who knows me since I'm 13 years old. I had everything going for me. I worked in corporate. Everything was great in my life. And definitely the healthiest person in my family and in my friend group, definitely. And, for someone, let's say even a personal trainer, to be diagnosed with something, it's out of left field. And I understand that from someone who, let's say, who runs marathons or someone who is in the health and wellness industry, but as a consumer, and let's say a lifetime runner or something of this nature. And then all of a sudden they're diagnosed with something just out of the ordinary and it comes out of left field. And so this is how I felt. I felt like this was out of left field. I felt like this was a mistake. I felt like this was horrible on many levels, especially for what I was reading. I couldn't believe it. I was just like, where is this coming from? This is somebody who watches her sugars, who watches her weight, who's always in the gym. Like, this doesn't make sense. So of course, I took my hairstylist advice. I started seeing one doctor and another and another and another. And at the time, I was transitioning. I had just gotten engaged and I was transitioning to Europe. So I moved to Europe. I saw doctors there with, my fiance.
Okay.
And the doctors in Europe were absolutely, helpless. They had no tools, no techniques, no nothing. All they said to me was they shrugged their shoulders and said, "Stop wearing a ponytail." But I never wore ponytails. And so, I mean, this was not the cause nor the issue. And so I saw more doctors in Denver. I saw more doctors in California, and they wanted to give me a banquet or whole host of pharmaceuticals, everything from cortisone shots to creams and to this nature. And I didn't want to take any of that because as I was about to get married and start a family, that was our goal, to start a family. And when I started doing my research, I realized that a lot of these medications harm your fertility, whether it's a man or a female. And so this is part of the problem because there's alopecia meds for men and they cause erectile dysfunction. They cause ED, and they cause a lot of other, male genetic type situations for their gender. And for female, it's the same thing. It's just a different for females. And so this was part of the angst and the anxiety of trying to almost fight against time because you're in your 30s and you want to hurry up and have your kids. But at the same time, in all honesty, my fertility was more important than the hair. The hair is important, absolutely, but having healthy kids is such a blessing to have. And this was really the bigger goal. And so in my quest of trying to find one avenue or another, I knew that seeing doctors, doesn't matter what type of doctor, whether it was a dermatologist, Ayurvedic, naturopath, or what have you, it was all boiling down to some sort of pharmaceutical or medication. So I knew that this wasn't the way. I knew that there was a better way. And so using my skills from having a master's degree, I started doing in-depth research and lots of research. And over the course of 4 years, I was able to heal myself. Now, granted, I started seeing hair growth towards the end of the 4th year, but I did. And then now I have, full head of hair, and I haven't had alopecia since. It's been more than 9+ years, and it's upgraded my fertility. I had my first baby at 40 and with no problems, beautiful pregnancy, 9-pound, 7-ounce baby. And it's been so amazing to reap the benefits of holistic healing and really getting to all the root causes and all the angles and areas that I needed to work on. And so once I started feeling this veil of symptoms come off me, because it wasn't just the hair loss, I'll tell you, it was everything from dry eyes to insomnia to just like itchy skin, to fatigue, to depression, to anxiety, a lot of things that I've never experienced. This is somebody, in all honesty, who's never been on medications, never had been on birth control, never had done anything. The most I had ever taken was Advil. And, there's certain times, let's say when I took out my wisdom teeth where, yes, okay, you take a little medication for that because it's excruciating pain. But outside of this, there was nothing. I wasn't the type to call in sick. I wasn't the type to stay home. I wasn't that sickly kid. I was always at school, always fine, never called in sick from work. And so, try to putting the pieces together really took a matter of months and years. And then on top of it, it's not just uncovering the blind spots, but it's working through all of them, right? It's almost like the math equation. It's not just getting the answer, but you have to work through it so that everything aligns just right. And so this is what it took from me. And it took a lot of tenacity and consistency and patience to get through it all. And then when I started feeling that those symptoms came off, and they came off again towards that 4th year, I knew I was onto something. And I was like, people need to know. It shouldn't be this big of a struggle for healing. It shouldn't be this big of angst of just curling up in the bathroom crying. It shouldn't be this episodes of emotions and roller coaster of emotions. It shouldn't be this difficult. And on top of it, I shouldn't have wasted my time with all these doctors giving me a bunch of meds, which are only going to hinder and harm my fertility, my hair, my health in other areas. And then, of course, not even give me results, not even guarantee my hair back, because it could backfire. It could not work. Like, there's so many different, paths. Even if you were to take something like minoxidil, it could not work. It can backfire. It can create a side effect. Like, there's just so many things. And so I'm results oriented and driven. And I knew that if I was suffering, and this shouldn't have been prolonged for 4 years, it should have been a lot less. And so I went on to create an ebook. I went on to create a course. I went on to help others who were suffering in the same position as I was. And I wanted to condense the time for healing and for that possibility. And hence Alopecia 𝐬𝐮𝐬 was born. And Alopecia 𝐬𝐮𝐬 now has been helping children, men, women in 67 countries for over 8 years now. And it's all holistic, no medications. It's all natural. There's no side effects. It's only you come in where you come in and you are guaranteed to be up-leveled. Like, you're only going to move on forward in your health, mentally, emotionally, physically, of course, with the hair, with the health, because it's all connected. This has been my mission, that people who want to heal have this option to do so naturally and holistically. And then, of course, they reap the benefits of that. It not only helps them heal and get their hair back, but it also alleviates any and other second or third autoimmune disease, any other health concern they may be going through, any fertility or infertility issues, any other health goals, because more than likely we all have more than just one hair goal. Or more than just one health goal. It may be hair loss or hair growth at this moment, but it's probably in accordance with other things, right? Maybe we want to get through menopause, easy breezy. Maybe we want to have that second, third, fourth kid. Maybe we want, XYZ. And so it just all depends who you're working with, but there's always more to the story than just hair loss.
Yes, yes. So there's a few things I want to kind of circle back to that you mentioned that I've heard so many times. So the first one is that you went to so many doctors, even in Europe and the United States, and did not get the results, any results that you were looking for. And I've heard women say the same thing so many times. Like, that is a consistent story when you're talking to a woman with hair loss. They had to go to so many different doctors, try so many different treatment plans, and nothing worked. And they get to the point to where they become frustrated, angry. They're spending money, time, energy. They're getting their hopes up that something's going to work, because of course they want their hair and it's not working. So they're disappointed. So it's like a lot of emotions that comes with that. And I'm glad you said it as well, because it's like, I keep hearing this over and over again. So I want to make sure that the audience out there, if you are new or you're just kind of just now experiencing hair loss, or you're even going through that process where you're taking these medications, I want you to make sure you listen, because the medications have side effects. They can do different things to you. They may work, they may not work. So I know going the holistic route is always the best route. I've also met women with hair loss who prefer the holistic route. They're trying things out themselves that are, just holistic, that's working for them. But the other piece you said is there's not one treatment for all, which is the same when you go to a dermatologist. Whatever they're prescribing you, they're going to try something because it may have worked for someone else, or a certain treatment plan that may have worked for someone else. It may not work for you. Then they'll put you on something different. So let's go into the work you do in your program. I mean, you've talked about Alopecia 𝐬𝐮𝐬, but you have a program called Hair and Heal. Okay. So I want you to elaborate on that, because this program, as you kind of alluded to, it kind of caters to an individual's need. It's not a blanket program. So go ahead and tell the audience about Hair and Heal, the Hair and Heal program.
So the Hair and Heal program is what I wish I would have had or found when I was going through alopecia. And so I created it out of my own frustration, out of my own challenges. However, I've also encompassed other areas that are correlated to hair loss that may not affect me, may not affect you, or maybe even some of your listeners. However, they are connected. So it's just like, let's say when you go to school and you learn about US history, you're only going to be tested on maybe 2 parts of US history. Let's say all the presidents, but there's a bunch of other stuff in US history that would be nice to know or needed to know. And so this is kind of the gamut of what I show you. I show you everything that's connected and correlated to hair loss, whether or not it affects you. So you have all the answers to the test right in front of you, first and foremost. Second, we offer functional medicine testing, which is huge. So for example, earlier in my introduction, you mentioned 90% of people see hair growth in less than 8 weeks. This is true. But what happens to the other 10%? Well, the other 10% take a little bit longer, and potentially they may need a little testing. And as someone in her mid 40s, as you and I are, you would know that, your pap smears, your blood draws, everything changes year to year, hormones, thyroids, depending on the cycle, depending on what's happening, depending if it was postpartum or, perimenopause or anything else that's happening in your life. So things change. They're not static, especially for a woman. And so the importance on functional medicine, right? Comprehensive testing is key. And I offer this worldwide, because I had zero access to this. So this is a real sticking point for me, because when I was living in the Netherlands and then I moved to Japan, I still didn't have access. I had to come in for a flight into California just to see a functional medicine doctor, just to get labs done. And I didn't have insurance. And so the insurance in Europe is, it's universal healthcare. And I got to tell you, there's no healthcare system that's really spectacular anywhere around the world. However you dice it, slice and dice it. But as Americans, we tend to think that it's greener on the other side. And I got to tell you, it's not. It's not. I have tons of horror stories to tell you, but maybe for a following podcast episode. But the functional medicine piece is huge, because gaining access to this is not possible. So for example, I have a client, she's a gut health coach in Australia. She doesn't have access to this type of testing in Australia. So what happens? She's been dealing with her issues for decades and her hair loss for decades. She comes to me. I have a 12-page evaluation that we start everybody with. Once I look at this 12-page evaluation, she was actually traveling. She implemented just a handful of things. In 24 hours, her hair loss stopped. I actually just posted today about a current client, Vicky, who saw hair loss shedding stop in 7 days. And so the thing is, it doesn't matter your background or education or what testing you think you've done. If it's not the gold standard, then you're probably cheating yourself. Maybe the expertise isn't there. Maybe the person who's offering them doesn't have the full access to it, like a lot of naturopathic doctors and such that I know in Canada or Australia or in the UK. You just can't access this as you can in the US. And so this is why I offer it to my clients worldwide, because it's so key for information, for data, because you don't want to be guessing about a certain situation. You don't want to guess if you have, some sort of situation in your gut when maybe it's something else, or, and so we start off with an evaluation. From there, I tailor the program to you, because each person is different. The way you heal somebody in their mid-age versus a 5-year-old versus a lady in her 60s versus somebody trying to get pregnant in their 30s or 20s. It all looks different. I've even had clients who are post-chemo or postpartum. And so this also looks a little different, because you have other variables and factors that you need to consider. And then also, if you have people who have, as I mentioned, a second or a third autoimmune disease, or maybe they're on medications for something else, maybe on blood pressure medications or anything else that you need to consider. This is why the one size fits all never works. The Nutrafols, the Viviscals, the minoxidils, that's all a waste of money and time, because you're just trying to play whack-a-mole with a lot of things, just like your doctors, to see what sticks. And that's not the way. The way is really to take every person individually, tailor what they need to their needs, to their level of their needs and support, and then have them see the success, whether it's in baby steps or whether it's at that marathon or sprint or however fast they want to go, but they can make the progress even in baby steps.
Okay. Okay, so I have a couple questions, follow-up questions to that, right? So I know, you cater it to an individual's needs. Why don't dermatologists take this same approach? I don't know if you know that answer or not, but like, why wouldn't they, if they see that the medication isn't working, I guess, across the board, it may work for a little bit for some people, or, like we said, everybody's different. So why aren't they looking at the more holistic approach and the functional medicine side of it?
So there's a couple of reasons why. First, when it comes to healthcare, healthcare is a business, and healthcare as a business only makes money with surgeries and medications, right? This is why, Ozempic is so expensive. This is why a lot of drugs that people need with chronic diseases are very expensive, especially on a monthly basis. When you look at JAK inhibitors, I've seen people spend $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $9,000 a month out of pocket just to obtain the JAK inhibitors because of their insurance, because of some cover, some don't cover, coverage ends. Health insurance decides when and if they cover it, when they want to stop it, and then you're just notified, and then you're stuck with a bill.
Right.
This is where things get tricky because it's a business that runs on, profits, right? And so they profit as long as they keep you sick. So as long as you're sick and you're needing medications, the more profits they make, more revenue, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a business in all sorts.
Right.
So they're not in the business to heal you or cure you. And when it comes to, let's say a broken arm, they're fantastic. You have a broken arm, they will fix it and they will put it back together. You have a broken nose, same thing. If you have heart failure, same thing, because it's all surgery. That's what they're trained on. In medical school, they're trained on that. And then, of course, on pharmaceuticals. They're not trained on nutrition. If anything, they get less than 4 hours of a nutrition education. And the thing is, I've even had nutritionists come to me with their hair loss. So sometimes it's not even about the education of being a nutritionist. To understand that nutrition for each person is going to look different. I've had as clients vegans, vegetarians, pescatarians, people who are halal, people who, observe Ramadan, the gamut. And so you have to mitigate all the allergies, all the adversary type of foods that they do or don't want to eat, and try to make this work for all of them. And so this is where it's all tailored to each person. This is why I see such high success. And this is also why when you're a medical doctor, normally your establishment is telling you, these are the drugs you can offer, these are the ones we offer, and that's it.
Okay.
There's no going outside of this box. So in many ways, doctors are also held accountable into a certain box. And so maybe even during COVID, you might have seen where some doctors or some facilities had the Pfizer vaccine and some others had Johnson & Johnson. Well, they weren't, they didn't have the banquet. They only had certain ones. And so this is also how doctors operate, because they're under the hospital, they're under the insurance, they're under that global coverage of sorts, that, administration that's ensuring that they follow the rules. They have to only offer A, B, C, not D, E, F.
Okay. Got it. So that makes it very, very clear. Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah.
Now, okay, so I know you just talked about how insurance will not cover certain things when it comes to alopecia. I don't think they cover a lot because the people I've spoken with and work with, they talk about it all the time, how they have to pay out of pocket for certain medications and treatments and different things like that. Now, me personally, I'm a person who I never took any medications. So I don't really know that side of it.
Yeah.
But if they're paying all of this money out of pocket, so when you talk about the holistic approach, we know you have to pay out of pocket for that, right? And a lot of times people have this misconception, or it may be a misconception, it may not be, depends on the people, that when you're talking about holistic, organic, all of these different natural things, that there's a price tag with that just because it's healthier for you. So how would you address that? Like if you had someone coming to you who really wanted to work with you, but were concerned about, hey, I don't know if I can afford to go down this route or down this path of functional medicine because I know I have to buy these natural things. How would you address that with them?
So let's ask the other question. The other side of the story to this is, what is the price you're paying for having a situation that you don't want, that potentially inhibits how you work? It creates a disability of sorts. Mentally, it may handicap you. Physically, it may handicap you, spiritually, physically, emotionally, mentally. So all these things, it has ripple effects. As someone who's gone through it myself, I'm very extroverted, I'm very bubbly and outgoing, and I became a shell of myself. I became a hermit crab. I didn't want to go out. Yes, I was dating and then I got engaged, but even then, the happiness wasn't as happy. It wasn't like 100% through the roof as it should have been, because there was this underlying situation that I had zero control of. That was my thought at the time, zero control. Now I know I have all the control, but at the time it was uncertain. I didn't know what was going to happen or how my future would look like. It was a big question mark. And so when I talk to clients, they're sometimes in very similar situations. I have executives that I've worked with where they can't go around with their beard with bald spots, or here with bald spots looking like a cheetah, because they have an executive position. They can't wear a baseball cap. They're not, working remote. They're working in an office, dealing with clients, having a sales position type thing, or maybe a manager, VP position, and you need to look professional. And for men, okay, sure, maybe you're able to shave the beard, but then from having hair to shaving your head all of a sudden is also a drastic approach in corporate. And so you have that. I've also had preschool and kindergarten teachers who they tell me that their students are making fun of them because, these 2, 3, 4, 5-year-olds don't know any better. And they're like, hey,
Right.
what's that? Hey, what, you know what I mean? And they start picking out your flaws as children
Right.
do. And so
Yes.
this is also disheartening for that teacher. And then you also have, ladies who are, okay, maybe married, maybe widowed, maybe dating, but then also any of these relationships, it's hard to maintain. It's hard to talk about because no one understands you. And so it's one or the other. It's either you invest in yourself for the betterment of your well-being all around. It's beyond the hair. It's mental, physical, emotional well-being. And then also for your future health. Like, how is it that you want to live in the future? Do you want to live with your full head of hair? Or do you want to choose, or maybe not choose, another route? Because people who have one autoimmune disease, 25% go on to acquire a second and a third. So this is also that time crunch. In my case, it wasn't just fertility. It was also like, oh no, no one is raising their hand saying, I want MS, I want lupus, I want rheumatoid arthritis, I want Hashimoto's, Graves' disease, vitiligo. Like there's so many autoimmune diseases that like to buddy up together. And this is the concerning aspect of it, because I've seen 6-year-olds with 3 autoimmune diseases. I've seen 50-year-old ladies with 3 autoimmune diseases. And it's not until they lose their hair where now, we're doing something about it, and we're really, pushing the pedal faster to get results quicker, because you can hide Hashimoto's. No one has to see or know that you have a thyroid issue because they can't see it. No one has to know that you have arthritis because it's just you maybe, aching ever so slightly in your back, in your arms, or what have you. No one has to know that you need surgery somewhere. So it's a lot of symptoms that a lot of times you don't have to share or showcase, but then when it comes to alopecia, it's obvious. And it's, and you get those looks, and I'm sure you've received those looks too, where, whether they're kind of looking at you, it's like, are you a cancer patient? Are you having alopecia? Like, what's happening? And so it's one of those things where it's more noticeable. it's definitely more shocking, right? To your community, to your friends, to your family who've known you always as a certain way. And then potentially it's where the rubber meets the road, where you're either doing something about it, you're accepting it, or you're choosing to do nothing, or you're choosing medications, or you're choosing what you think is best for you. And this is why I like to educate. So, for example, on my website, I have a free PDF of all medications that cause hair loss directly as a side effect, everything from birth control to SSRIs to so much. It's a long list. And then I have also all the side effects of alopecia meds and what that looks like too. Because the thing is, we're indoctrinated, probably as a small children, to just believe and take what the doctor says as gospel. And we don't question. I'm the opposite. I've always questioned. I've always had too many questions. I was always that annoying child where, teachers didn't like the questioning kid because I had a lot of questions. And so in my search for healing, I asked a lot of questions and I would see the faces of the doctors and they were just kind of like, you could see in the body language, they had no answers for me. So when I pressed them for more answers, it was kind of like, I don't know, we don't have an answer. Like it was this type of thing where there was no more to give, no results to show, no guarantees, no nothing. And so even when you're starting to ask, let's say your doctor about side effects, they're not going to spend the time with you talking about it. That's up to the consumer, right? Or the client to do their due diligence. And what many people do not do their due diligence. And I think that's what hurts us in the end. We get desperate trying to find a solution. We think medications is the route. We start trying a bunch, and then we end up in a worse situation. In my research in the beginning, I was seeing that there was an article on this 20-year-old that she had to have a hip replacement because her alopecia meds had caused like her hips to go out or some sort of calcium loss, and she was only 22. And then, right? And so then I also saw more and more articles of young people also trying to find cures and solutions to their alopecia situation. And it was only hurting their kidneys, it was hurting their liver. And even actually Women's Health magazine came out saying that Nutrafol had caused liver damage to a 26-year-old. And so it's these things that we don't know until decades later of how a medication, especially a new one, is going to affect us. So for example, we all are pretty aware of how breast implants cause autoimmune diseases, cause a bunch of things and side effects. But I'm 44, 45-ish. When I was 18, this was very popular in California. So over 20 years ago. And only now are we hearing about it. So it takes about 20 years to get the full picture of what side effects look like. And many people don't know, but JAK inhibitors are type 1 carcinogens, meaning they cause cancer. And so
I did not know that.
many people don't know that. And so this is the thing. It's like, we're just thinking, oh, JAK inhibitors are the latest and the greatest. No, there's actually a dark side to everything. And this is why we have to understand every side of the coin when it comes to medications, especially. So the natural and holistic route, it may, of course, cost you. And yes, it's out of pocket, but it's so worth it because you're not only going to get your hair back, but you're going to understand why this even happened in the beginning. And then you're going to understand how to avoid it, not just now, but for the rest of your life. So for example, yes, I had the autoimmune alopecia. Yes, it was moving into totalis. However, ever since healing it, I've never had alopecia come back. That's even after a pregnancy at 40. That's even after COVID. That's even after stressful times. I moved to 3 different countries in less than a year and a half. I mean, so you name it, like I've been through the ringer of stress and ups and downs, and still alopecia is there. It's dormant. It's in remission, as many people like to say. And this is where we want it. Just like cancer, we want everything dormant in remission because I actively choose to maintain and upgrade my health. And this is, once you know, and you can't go back to your old ways. And so once you have all those answers, all those questions and results right there at your fingertips, you have nothing more than just to follow directions and move forward.
Yes. Now, that's interesting what you said about the JAK inhibitors. And this is why I was so shocked because I was at the Scarring Alopecia conference this year. It was earlier this year. And that was a hot topic. That was one of the topics that many of the doctors were talking about, or, you know, it was a whole presentation about it. And I've talked to women who have tried it or they're doing it now and all of those things. So to find out that it causes cancer, I'm like, oh my goodness. So you start off with one thing and you're ending up with something totally different that is way worse and life-threatening.
Yeah.
That's why I'm like, oh goodness. Okay. So I need to talk to people about this.
Well, if you start to think about it and you start to see parallel patterns, you'll even see this in the weight loss drugs. You know, back in the 80s and 90s, it was fen-phen that was all the rage. Fen-phen caused a lot of deaths, so they took it off the market. And a lot of times that's what it takes in medicine. In medicine, it's trial and error. People don't realize that. And it should take, whether it's a vaccine or other, years of trial and error, years of trying to see what this really looks like and how this really affects people in order to finally be approved and bring it to market. But if you start to really dig deep into the research, you'll see that Europe, even when it came to COVID, they were very slow to bring things into market, whether it was the COVID vaccine or not. You know, Europe, I was living there during the time, and COVID had a very like neutral stance. It was like a wait and see. Let's wait and see what the Americans do first. You know, how many Americans died, how many Americans are affected, how many Americans before we implement anything. It was a wait and see situation in Europe, which is a very cautionary approach. And yet you see that they tend to be healthier than us in general, right? And so we're number one for chronic disease. We're number one for diabetes. We're number one for autoimmune diseases. Granted, we also have a bigger population, but at the same time, we're also quick to throw things out to market.
Yeah.
Then we're like, oh, any side effects, any ramifications, we'll figure it out once we cross that bridge, right? That's the mentality that a lot of people think. And so this is the situation, because even with GLP-1s for weight loss, as they're so popular, cause hair loss, but they also cause other things too. And so people won't really understand the full breadth of what this looks like until a good 5-10 years from now.
Okay. Now, before we actually started the podcast, we were having a conversation and I was telling you about myself and how I have scarring alopecia.
Yep.
So I know scarring alopecia, or from what I've heard, let me just say that. I'm not going to say I know, because I learn new things all the time. But from what I've been told and understand, like once you reach a certain level of scarring alopecia, then there's nothing you can really do. And that's kind of why I've taken my stance of, okay, there's nothing I can do, because I have such a large portion of my scalp that is scarred. You know, I was just like, forget it. I'm just cutting my hair off. But with your approach, I know you work with women with scarring alopecia, and I know a lot of people in my audience have scarring alopecia as well. And there are different forms of scarring alopecia. So just in case anyone out there doesn't know that, there are different forms of it. But how do you help women with scarring alopecia? Because I know that's a different beast.
It is a different beast, but the latest research, as I mentioned to you earlier, is that it's showing more likeness as autoimmune. And so there's a lot of more understanding now than before. And I think before the doctor would say, oh, you have scarring alopecia, sorry, go home. There's nothing you can do. That's probably what you're told.
And that's exactly what I was told.
So from my clients who have scarring alopecia, they tend to be fighters. They don't give up. They've seen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different doctors, and each doctor has given them either different diagnoses or different tidbits of information around their diagnosis. And so to me, having scarring alopecia is not a death sentence. It's something where we should look at it as in a curiosity type format, meaning let's see if upgrading our biology can reverse some of the situations. Because actually I'm recording a podcast this week about metabolic health, because a lot of times hair loss, hair growth is also in conjunction with metabolic health. This is also what we focus on: metabolic health, diabetes, prediabetes, cellular optimization, and all these other things. 1 in 5 people don't even realize they're pre-diabetic, and yet they are. And that's in the US. And so these are things that there's a lot of hidden factors and a lot of things that can be leading to our hair loss, and we have no clue about it. And so I look at the person as a person and I start dissecting them and seeing where we can make changes, where we can tweak, where we can upgrade.
Stay tuned for part 2 of the Bougie Baldie Podcast with guest Joanna Dahlman.
Thank you for listening and watching the Bougie Baldie Podcast. I appreciate you as an audience member. Now, make sure you go and check out the Bougie Baldie TV show. You can watch it from any device, any smart device. All you have to do is go to 𝐻𝐵𝐵𝐷𝐿𝐿.com and you will be able to pull up my show. It is under the lifestyle section on the menu if you don't see it on the front page. So make sure you go check it out. And if you did not get it, it's 𝐻𝐵𝐵𝐷𝐿𝐿.com. Go ahead and click on the link in my show notes if you want to make it easier for yourself, and it'll take you directly there. I will speak to you on the next episode of the Bougie Baldie Podcast. Bye.
Thank you for watching the Bougie Baldie Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe